Today's podcast is brought to you by Jerry Robinson's PACE Portfolio. Learn how to shield your investments from economic uncertainty with this complete do-it-yourself portfolio package. Learn more at paceportfolio.com. That's PACE portfolio.com.
Friends, welcome to the only radio broadcast dedicated to your personal, spiritual, and financial liberty. This is Follow the Money Daily, a daily podcast found right here on ftmdaily.com, hosted by myself, Jerry Robinson. I'm an economist, author of the best-selling book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation. And as always, I'm joined by my lovely wife, co-host, and the national director for our Christian Financial Advisor Network, Jennifer Robinson. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning, Jerry. It's a good Monday morning. There is so much happening around the world, in the U.S., and so we're going to break some things down today. But first, if you haven't checked out Jerry's book, by the way, his best-selling book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, you can run over to our store over on ftmdaily.com and you can get a copy of that. It comes in paperback or audiobook. So if you don't like sitting down and reading a book, but you maybe drive in the car a lot or you work out with headphones, you can get the audiobook. And so that's available. You can also get a free study guide for Jerry's book for those who have read it and really enjoy it, and maybe you want to start a book club or maybe go over the book in a Sunday school class or a small group. You can download a free study guide, and you can do that by going to ftmdaily.com/study guide.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Well, this whole weekend has been something, hasn't it? As we look over and we see what's happening in the Middle East, we see what's happening in Europe, and of course in the Ukraine with Russia, and have several comments on this today. I just got to tell you, there is so much to take in, and the mainstream media is just shoveling it down our throats. I mean, if you take a look at how they are handling both the Ukrainian situation and how they are handling the issue that's occurring in Israel and Gaza, you can see their incentives on full display, what they're wanting you to focus on. So let's focus first upon what's happening in the Ukraine with the tragic downing of the Malaysian Flight 17 that was flying over a highly contested part of the Ukraine-Russian border. Absolutely horrific what we are seeing, with the dead bodies just strewn about in the area where the plane has crashed. There are numerous reports from different media outlets that access has been restricted to the area. And we even saw this morning, and I won't play the clip for you, but President Barack Obama was in a speech stating that his own investigation into what happened that day, 4 days ago now, over the Ukraine-Russian border, along with other international investigations, have been stifled. They have been prevented. And what we're also seeing, too, is anti-Russia sentiment just seems to be growing. We're seeing it running deep in Malaysia, of course, itself. That's not a surprise. But we're also seeing it grow in the Netherlands. The Netherlands, of course, is where this plane originated, going from Amsterdam on into Malaysia. So no surprise that we're seeing this anti-Russian sentiment. But I got to be honest with you. Based upon everything that I've seen so far, I'm a little concerned. We know that the United States is engaged in a heavy currency war with the BRICS nations. We've been seeing these headlines build. You've been seeing it almost on a daily basis, and we've been tracking them here about how the U.S. and Russia have been in this tit for tat going back and forth. One day you'll see that the United States is placing sanctions upon Russia, and then the very next day you'll see that Russia has done something back. And Russia just recently placed a U.S. lawmaker and 12 other people connected with the Guantanamo Bay detention camp on its list of those who are banned from entering the country. So it's a lot of tit for tat, a lot of this back and forth. And now we have a plane, a commercial jet airliner, shot down in Ukraine over the Ukrainian-Russian border. Now, this area has been contested for some time after the Crimean invasion, as it was called in the Western press, as Russia came in and decided that it wanted to have this area. Now, since then, there have been many complaints from the West that the Russians need to extract themselves from this area. It's a lot like what happened in Iraq. If you remember how the Russians were against an Iraqi invasion, the Chinese were not so much for it either, as there were concerns and complaints. Putin called the Iraq War a great political error at the time, not giving his full support to the United States. And so here we have something similar. Russia has made a move. It is catering to the pro-Russian-Ukrainian, what they're calling separatists. And by catering to this area and catering to these people, it has really ticked off the West. It has ticked off Europe. Europe has great plans for expanding its empire, the European Union. And Ukraine is a very sensitive and strategically located country. Russia knows this. Of course, Europe does as well. And so it's caused a major problem to begin rising between these two great powers. But here we have a constant concern about this area that has been taken by the quote-unquote separatists, those who are sympathetic to Russia, those living in the Ukraine. And after weeks of threats for Russia to exit, for Russia to go back, for Russia to stop providing any kind of military support for these separatists, suddenly, out of the air falls a plane in that exact same area of the world. And the media immediately tells us that it's Russia. The media almost instantaneously tells us that Russia supported it, that the Ukrainian separatists are the ones that shot it down. Well, maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Because up until this point, the proof has been very, very difficult to find. There have been a couple of pieces of evidence which have already been discounted by several authoritative people, so we don't really know what happened that day. But what we do know is that the area that the plane fell into is hotly contested. What we do know is that the United States and Russia are engaged in a massive tit-for-tat currency war, and here you have the United States and you have Russia. Let's think about who benefits from shooting down an airliner over this part of the world. If Russia knew that this was going to happen, you'd have to admit they must be the most foolish people on the planet. Putin must be completely dumb to have supported something like this. You would have to agree, considering his overall goal and plan. This is not the kind of thing that goes over real well on social media, is it? This is not the way to make friends and influence people, to shoot down innocent people in a commercial jet airliner. So too, the separatists who have been accused of shooting down this plane, you have to think what was in it for them. It's very possible that they thought they were shooting at another plane. That's one plausible theory. However, what the media has been saying is that the anti-aircraft missiles that were used by the Ukrainian rebels, as they're being called, the pro-Russian separatists, were supplied to them by Putin, which would mean that Putin in some way is, indirectly, or as some would say, directly related to this incident. Now, let's just take a look at the other side of the coin. How would the West benefit from this? Could the West benefit from this? Well, no doubt, as far as having this ongoing currency war and this tit for tat, this is certainly a major boon for the West, right? The West can now use this as an international billy club on Putin. They can use it as an international billy club on Russia and upon Russia's efforts in the Ukraine. So it certainly fits helping the United States in its ongoing war of rhetoric against Russia. But so too, the sensitive nature of the area that the plane fell into also offers the West a boon, because it allows now the West and all European powers to now have access to the area that is under question. So the U.S. has ratcheted up sanctions against Russia, and what they've been saying up until this point is they have been concerned about Russia. But remember, there's much, much more to this entire situation than just this airliner that went down 4 days ago. The United States has been seeking for a way for some time, and it's very evident. If you just go back and listen to our programs, or if you go back and just look at the news, you'll see how the U.S. has been trying. Obama himself has been attempting to demonize Putin because Putin is part of what we call the new great game. This area over here, the Caspian Sea region, the Central Asian areas, no doubt Ukraine, all of this is very strategic land. All of this is very strategic land. Now, we also have Russia partnering with China and the other BRICS nations to form a BRICS bank. You know, that just happened just a couple of days ago. All this stuff is just happening just now. It's all happening at the same time. So the BRICS Bank is announced. We're going to stop using the dollar, Russia says. We're going to start increasing trade with China. So how does this benefit the U.S.? The U.S. is attempting to apply massive pressure internationally to Russia. Certainly it can go to China and say, no, you cannot be dealing with Russia. I mean, this guy's a quack, right? He's shooting planes down out of the sky. So we really need you to stop working with him and cooperating with him, or we're going to have a problem, right? So that certainly helps break up this BRICS momentum a little bit, doesn't it? It also helps the Europeans. You know, the Europeans are no doubt wanting Ukraine fully back because they are trying to align themselves with Ukraine. This is a very, very deep historical area. What we're seeing happen right now in this area is a massive power struggle. And I've just got to tell you, I'm not saying either way. I have no clue who shot that plane down. I mean, I don't know who does. But you have to admit, this is just perfect for the West. It's perfect. It allows them into the highly contested area. Can you imagine? Just think about it. Let's reverse it. Let's think that back in the 2003 Iraq War, remember I told you that Putin said that invasion was a great political error. Well, let's imagine that the United States goes into Iraq back in 2003, and then a Russian airliner is shot down over Iraq, and it comes down to the ground, and Russian people die. And Russia wants to come into the war zone. Do you think the United States would be saying, oh, sure, yeah, just come right in, considering that you didn't want us to do this in the first place, and considering you're our enemy, and considering that you've, lambasted us in the press about what we're doing? Oh, sure, send in your people. Oh, yeah, send some military people, too, just to check on it. You think they would even let them in the country? I'm telling you, there's something fishy about this story. I don't know what it is. And you know what else the mainstream press has already done? I have not seen this in all my years of watching this stuff. Within 2 days, I think it was literally maybe it was the first day, I can't remember. The Washington Post ran a story on the conspiracy theories that were popping up about this airplane. They hardly ever touched the conspiracy theories about 9/11 after it happened. And over time, we really haven't seen that too much from the mainstream press. But I'm talking within a day or two, the press had already decided that Putin was to blame. They were already beginning the anti-Russia sentiment in their articles and in the mainstream press. And on top of that, we had conspiracy theories being bantered about in the mainstream press saying, we already have the crazies popping up saying maybe it wasn't the official story. We already have crazies popping up who are starting to question what we're saying as gospel truth. It's 2 days after, and you have no real proof. So you got to be paying attention here. Those of you who trust the mainstream media, those of you who listen to the mainstream media and you believe what ABC, CBS, and NBC, they all say the same thing. But those of you who believe what they say, then you probably have no problem with the official story. But those of you who have some sort of doubt about this mainstream media that's owned by 5 or 6 corporations globally, which we'll do a show on that later this week. We're going to do a show on the 5 or 6 corporations that own the entire media. 95% of what you hear and see on a daily basis is brought to you by 6 multinational corporations. And if you think for a moment that these 5 or 6 multinational corporations have the truth and your best interests at heart, then, my friend, you are woefully mistaken. These 5 to 6 multinational corporations have one agenda, and that is maximizing profits, just like all corporations do. Let truth be a casualty. So we don't know what happened in Russia, and this is what's bothering me. This is exactly what we saw happen to Assad in Syria. Remember the butcher Assad? The mainstream media literally destroyed him. Now, the guy's a butcher. I mean, the guy is no doubt, there's a problem with this guy. But the way that they made him sound in the mainstream press and the job that they did on him was just unbelievable. Remember how he was the butcher of all the kids, the innocent people, as the U.S. was ratcheting up its war against Syria, trying to talk about the red line? We're seeing something similar now with Putin. Putin is being demonized. And it just so happens that Putin is also trying to get away from what? He's trying to get away from the U.S. dollar. What is Europe trying to do right now? They're trying to get away from the U.S. dollar. Remember, we've been talking about this. So if Russia's trying to get away from the U.S. dollar and Europe's trying to get away from the U.S. dollar and their neighbors, what better way? Now, see, I don't want to say it. I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm saying that if you look at the incentives, though, what does the U.S. gain and what does Russia gain from this? You have to admit that the U.S. gains a lot from this international tragedy. I just want you to be alert. I don't want you to start coming up with all kinds of conspiracy theory. I don't want to come up with all kinds of conspiracy theories. That's not my point in this show. I don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened at this point. I guess there's just a select few, and they aren't talking. And I know that the media says that they have some evidence, but you know what? None of that is really solid. It's almost all circumstantial, just like we had with the events that occurred in Syria. And once again, the mainstream media has been derelict, which is just its middle name, in talking about how, well, even if Russia and Putin did not directly sponsor this shooting down of this plane, they were the ones that must have supplied the anti-aircraft missiles to the separatists. Therefore, Putin is liable. Well, if that's the case, and if that's the standard that we're going to judge Russia by, then what do we do with ISIS as they run through the streets with U.S. Humvees, U.S. rocket launchers, U.S. grenade launchers, U.S. bazookas, U.S. arms, and they terrorize the poor, innocent people of Iraq and kill Christians? Have you seen the stories coming out from Iraq? Have you seen what the Christians are dealing with over here? 2 women were just stoned to death in Syria by ISIS for the crime of adultery. But that is just a small sampling of what ISIS has been doing as they level small Iraqi towns, kill innocent women, men, and children, all with the U.S. flag on the side of the weapons that they're using. So is the U.S. to blame for ISIS? If Putin is to blame for the separatists using weapons that he gave them, then I would assume that ISIS, one could only assume that the U.S. must be responsible for all of the killing and pillaging that's going on in Iraq by ISIS. The only difference is that the precious people in Iraq, the Christians who are huddling in churches, the Christians who are fleeing the country, they weren't in a commercial jet airliner. Is that what it takes to get the world's attention? You have a massacre happening in Iraq. We have to take a we need to take a big Boeing 777 and put them all in a plane, send them up in the air and let ISIS shoot them down. Then will that get the world's attention? Is that how you get the world's attention? Somebody knew how to get the world's attention, didn't they? Whoever did this over the Russian-Ukraine border and shot this plane down knew that they were going to get the world's attention. Who wants and who benefits from getting the entire world's attention on this contested spot? These Islamists in Iraq, ISIS, are demanding that Christians either convert or face death by the sword. There was a really interesting story that came out this week from the head of Iraq's largest church saying that the Islamic State militants who drove Christians out of Mosul are worse than the Mongol leader Genghis Khan. Those of you who know Genghis Khan, or at least the history of Genghis Khan, that is really a statement because Genghis Khan was a bad guy, really bad guy. And what we're seeing here is that the head of Iraq's largest church is saying ISIS is worse than this. He goes on and adds, "We have never seen anything happen like this in Christian or Islamic history. Even Genghis Khan didn't do this." So those of you who are believers, those of you who believe the Bible, you hold yourself out to be a follower of Christ, here you have your brothers and sisters in Iraq being massacred and told to convert or to pay a tax or to die, right? You got to leave. So this is a tragic story. And then, of course, what we have happening in Israel. And in the Gaza Strip, it's like the world's spinning out of control, isn't it? Sometimes it feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, you've got to give it up for this. It's really something. The times that we live in are very, very unique. This is a sad day. It's a sad week. It's a sad month. It's a sad year. What's been happening? I thank God for the freedom that I have in this country. I thank God that I can walk out of my house and I can do what I want to do. And I don't have to worry about the threats of Islamic insurgents crossing my border and coming in and killing me because they don't like the way I dress or they don't like the way I think. So to summarize, I think we should be very cautious about jumping to conclusions with what's happened in the Ukraine with this airliner that's down. I don't think it's a surprise that the separatists who hold this very hotly contested area are nervous about letting in the West and Europe. Just like anybody who gains a piece of territory wouldn't want their enemies coming in either. I think it's completely logical. If you really think about this, it's very logical as to why they don't want the West in. They're trying to make it a big question mark. Oh, why won't they let us in? Well, it kind of makes sense. I don't think the U.S. would want their enemies coming into their war zone and investigating, right? But again, I don't know who did it, so who knows? And what's happening in Iraq is an absolute tragedy. It deserves the world's attention. It certainly deserves our prayers. And of course, what's happening in Israel is just becoming out of control. It's unraveling. These are very interesting times, friends. We're going to try to keep our eyes on this all week, focusing on some different things. But just my 2 cents for you on Monday after all of the mainstream press has filled up our heads over the weekend, and I just have a lot of questions. Many more questions than answers.
We're coming back in just a moment. And remember, to find a Christian financial advisor in your area, visit www.cfanetwork.org.
Attention stock traders, FTM Daily is proud to announce our latest resources for stock traders of all experience levels. Are you ready to wade in the stock trading waters? Well, unlock Jerry Robinson's trading room and receive his daily stock trading idea, complete with buy price, stop loss price, exit target, and daily trading alerts. Become an FTM insider and unlock the trading room instantly. But perhaps one stock idea per day is not enough for you. No problem. Get everything in Option 1 Plus. Analyze any U.S. stock or ETF for short-term and long-term buy and sell signals with our new Trigger Trade Pro system. Find FTM Insider and Trigger Trade Pro in our online store today. Visit ftmdaily.com/store or give us a call at 800-609-5530. That's ftmdaily.com/store or call us at 800-609-5530.
Hey friends, this is Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly. Recently, we have been receiving many emails from our listeners commenting on the great help they're getting from our precious metals expert, Tom Cloud. Gold and silver are excellent hedges against the growing threat of coming U.S. inflation. Who's your gold guy? Make it Tom Cloud. With over 30 years experience with precious metals, Tom will answer all of your questions. Don't buy your gold and silver through some call center and pay inflated prices. Call my good friend Tom Cloud and speak directly with him and get all of your questions answered. For a limited time, Tom is offering free shipping and insurance on every gold and silver purchase made by our listeners. Call 800-247-2812. And when you do, tell him that Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly sent you, and he'll throw in that free shipping and insurance on your entire order. Call your gold guy, Tom Cloud, right now for the very best deals on gold and silver coins. 800-247-2812. That is 800-247-2812.
Jerry, I know that the listeners will appreciate your thoughts on everything happening in the Ukraine. I think it's so important to just stop and think and ask questions about what we've been hearing in all of the mainstream press and realize that nobody has the answer yet. And that, jumping to conclusions on these types of matters, they're huge matters, and we just have more questions before we reach a conclusion.
So true. And don't forget that the people who are listening in Russia, they're hearing a completely different story, right? Their perspective is very different. So different medias are being employed to propose different viewpoints on this. And there are just more questions than there are answers right now, Jennifer.
Exactly, Jerry. Well, let's move on and look at what's happening in the stock markets and gold and silver this morning. The S&P 500 is down several points to 1970. Gold is up to $13.12, and silver is up to $20.96, almost back up to $21 today. Jerry, as we start the week out here on Monday, what should investors be watching in these markets?
Well, I think no doubt the geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, all the things we just talked about, what's happening in the Ukraine, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Iraq, all of these things are weighing heavily on the markets. It has people concerned. We also know that overall volatility has been so low as of late that the markets have just been hesitant to dwell upon bad news. But we are seeing a little bit of a pullback this morning, and it may continue. Who knows exactly how long it'll last, but we do know that the overall trend in the markets here in the United States is up with a vengeance. And so we don't want to bet against this market right here. We just want to continue to watch and see what's going to happen. Of course, the geopolitical tensions are good for gold. They're good for silver. So we're probably going to see continued support of these two metals as we go forward. So geopolitics in view this week. We got to keep our eyes on what's happening and see how it impacts the markets.
Yes, and if you want to know what Jerry is trading this week, his stock trading ideas, you can become an FTM insider. It's very simple and you get instant access. And you can do that by visiting our store at ftmdaily.com. Just click on the store button and you can see all of our different membership products, and especially the FTM Insider, which has a lot of our different services, including Jerry's daily stock trading ideas.
All right, friends. Well, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for choosing to allow us into your life each and every day. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of yours as well. And as always, I leave you with this final word. This time, just a thought. I want to continue to pray for the peace of Israel, what's happening in Israel, and of course, what's also happening across the entire Middle East region. Let's just pray for peace to come to that region. Let that be upon our hearts today. Remember, friends, when you want the truth about the global economy, just follow the money. We'll see you again right back here tomorrow. Until then, God bless.
All of the information contained on Follow the Money is strictly for informational and educational purposes. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud and Jay Peroni, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of FTMDaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry and Jennifer Robinson do hold their insurance licenses and may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Jennifer Robinson is an investment advisor representative with Faith-Based Investor, LLC. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional before